Now I'm recording. So I'm going to do that one more time. So I'd like to introduce my friend Anneli Virkhaus, and we are going to hopefully have a weekly podcast where we are going to talk about everything that you can imagine, metaphysical, all the different realms. And today, I think this is my second podcast, and we are going to be talking about how we navigate the realm, the physical realms and the etheric realms. And I'm just gonna throw over the mic to you, Annalie, and let you introduce yourself a little bit, tell people a little bit about you, and then we can just jump right into the topic.
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Anneli. I am currently living in Monteagle, Tennessee. It's a place that you've either heard of or never heard of. It's really small. It's like 50 minutes away from Chattanooga and an hour and a half away from Nashville, kind of nestled up in the Cumberland Plateau. So a beautiful natural spot. If you don't like nature, you won't like living here. Yeah, so what I'm doing here right now is I own a yoga and sound healing studio. And so doing yoga, sound healing, Reiki, energy healing, kind of intuitive guidance. So also start offering quantum healing hypnosis techniques soon. Bringing lots of things to this area that are not common. Very, very much like a way shower for this area. Yoga is a way to get people in the door because yoga is more common, and then expose them slowly to the rest. So that's been what I've been doing here. Didn't know I was going to come back to this area. I went to high school in Swanee, which is 5 minutes from here. We moved here when I was 15 from Michigan. I hated living here because, again, when you're a teenager, you're like, what am I doing here in the middle of nowhere? I did not appreciate it. But anyway, the mountain called me back, and it's been back here for almost 6 years, which is hard to believe. Time is moving. Well, whatever that is, it's moving very fast. Yeah.
Very
So
cool. Very cool.
that's what I'm doing around here.
Fantastic. Thanks for that little background on you. I don't know. Me and you have had so many talks privately recently about so many different things. And one of the things that sparked me to want to do a podcast with you is that I feel both of us have quite a bit of experience of understanding like different realms and realities and understanding how to sort of navigate all that stuff and
Right.
or like kind of step into those realms with other people and make other people understand it. So I just like to, maybe do a little back and forth on that. And I really want to know like some of your tricks and tools and how you handle yourself to be able to do all that navigating.
Yeah. And that's a good topic, highly relevant.
Yeah, especially for these times.
Oh my God, it's so crazy. It's just, yeah, really intense. So, yeah, I'm happy to talk about that, however that flows.
So yeah, so how do you feel like yourself? Like let's just go back to where like we met. So like we
Oh
did meet at a festival
God.
and we met at a festival, and we don't necessarily have to get into all the details of that, but I think it's a good platform for like talking about how like different experiences we have to navigate in different ways and just
Yeah.
like stuff like that. So I'm just going to give over the mic to you for a while and just go for it. Tell me whatever
Sure.
you want to tell me.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, I think I've always viewed music festivals as a giant healing playground. Like anytime my husband and I were going to some festival, we're like, all right, get ready, like because the music is so powerful. It's a huge catalyst. And then just whatever else is time to come up. And this one, especially, I mean, it was Pyro Music Festival. So like fire. And then you have Sagittarius fire. Then there was a Sagittarius full moon. And so there There was a lot. There was a lot going on, and just other, for me, karmic things that were supposed to occur. And so, yeah, talk about like, and then, well, you may or may not be doing other things while you're at a music festival, wink, wink, which brings your awareness to higher levels, but also potentially navigating harder experiences like, whoa, which direction could that go? And so actually for me, because I'm really good at communicating, the intensity levels were able to go well because you could stay present and not shut down, not move into too much of a reactive state, and be able to communicate really difficult things, so, but a tool that I use personally to navigate stuff is music. So, but being at that festival now, I don't know if I'll ever, hearing Wookiefoot now, Wookiefoot's already emotional to me because their lyrics are so deep and profound. And then after all that stuff happened, I tried to listen to it one night. I'm like, nope, I'm driving. I might crash. Like, it's dark as fuck and there's deer. I can't do this.
Yeah, I do feel like there's certain kinds of music that I have to do at certain times in certain places, because I was actually talking to someone, and I can't remember who it was. I'm not sure. It was really recently. I was talking to somebody, and I was saying how I was listening to reggae, and I said to them that I felt like I was stoned. And sometimes I can get into the consciousness of what the music brings. And
Yeah,
if it is a substance that's kind of connected to that, I can kind of go into that energy without ever doing any substances. And
right.
I was explaining that, and I just thought that was like a really cool thing to be like in a clear space physically, but yet being able to get into the consciousness of the music, which,
Totally.
like reggae, for example, there's a lot of, marijuana smoking when people listen to reggae. And so like
Yep.
a lot of times when I put that on, I'll feel that energy when I'm listening to it, and I don't have to do any substances. And I
Yeah.
know that other people have discussed that kind of thing as well, where they feel like they're in a zone with that music and it puts them into a place. And I do feel like even like gongs and stuff, like,
Oh,
listening to gong playing, I feel is very it definitely like works out it balances out the chakras. But I'm sure you know a lot about that as well.
oh yeah. Well, the gong particularly can be really intense, and you never know how it's going to affect someone. And metal instruments, especially, they're kind of meant to shake things up. But as soon as you strike or make a sound, what happens to that person has nothing to do with you. Like me, the practitioner, it's going out into the ether as a wave and entering their body, and has far more knowledge than me. And so when I play sound, I'm just a vessel. I'm not performing. I'm just bringing sound. And sometimes people can't, like, the gong is probably one of the most intense. That's something that some people can't handle. I've had people get ice cold immediately when they hear the gong, or they get sick. Or one person recently, as soon as I barely played it, and they had to leave the room. And it's not good or bad. It's just, that's really, really powerful. But something I wanted to go back to, thinking of like feeling the vibration and essence of music, is that when people are making music, which there's so many levels that you could be aware at, and it's really hard to be super high level aware all the time. But let's just say you're making a track and you're working on it, all your energy is getting put into that, and then it's recorded in this piece of time, and then you hear it. And so that vibration can be felt and experienced. So what were they thinking, what were they feeling? And it wasn't one of my teachers, but it's from Victor Wooten, from his book, The Music Lesson. But basically, it is possible that you could just say you have a row of CDs, you could tell who the artist was just if you could tune into the vibration of that particular album or that person. And I'm getting closer and closer to being able to do all this, like just to sense and feel things. Now, describing it maybe verbally, or, you know, that gets a little harder. It's a different type of sensing, but I feel a lot of stuff, and so I really pay attention to how things make me feel, and I trust that. I'm like, is this what I want or need right now? And I'm not like judging it, but if it's like, no, I don't know what this is, I'm kind of unsure, then I might just stop. And I don't want to just listen to anything.
Same. Yeah, I think I've used quite a bit of discretion as I've gotten
Mhm.
older in regards to what kind of music and what kind of things I listen to. And I have like go-to music that instantly settles me, and like classical music. Like if no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, if I throw on classical music,
Oh yeah.
it will automatically like balance my chakras. Excuse me, and it will put me into a vibration place that's kind of like a zero set, like zero balance with me.
Hmm.
And there's like there's other stuff like gongs and singing bowls and things
Right.
like that that will instantly just settle and balance my energy. And then
Yeah.
anything else is just like it really riffs off of excuse me, wherever I'm at in that moment. It will take me somewhere from that moment. But I don't think I could handle being alive if I didn't have like
Yeah.
music. Like
Oh
I
no, just
literally,
forget
I
it.
exactly like
No,
I
forget it.
literally listen to like music like all day long at my job. Like I
Yeah.
have Spotify, I constantly changing my playlist, constantly listening to different music, and I do feel it's like it's like a recharge and like a drug almost. It's like it definitely changes and alters the mood that you're in depending on what you're listening to.
Oh, definitely. That's why it can be used as a tool. So if you're having a hard day, then pick music that either, if you want to match your mood to feel the emotions more deeply and let them flow, or if you need to uplift your mood or just completely distract yourself, or if you want to like dance, then turn on something with more rhythm. And then for me, the ultimate is okay, so then I'm dancing and sounding and just letting it all go. And of course, I'm doing this in like a private place where it's safe. But I just turn the music up loud and just kind of really get into it, like just expressing. They call it shaking medicine. You're just letting whatever needs to be expressed out without worrying about analyzing it. I don't give a shit what it's about.
Hmm.
I just want
Yeah.
it to keep moving out because I don't tend to live in the mind and need to over analyze. I mean, I we have that as a tool, but like that's why I think regular talk therapy is can be so ineffective because they're just up here repeating the same thing. They haven't worked on it really emotionally. They haven't worked on it physically or energetically. And don't you want to end that story? Like that tape has been playing for God knows how long. Isn't it time to move to something else? Write a new one already. That's so
Yeah, and
move
there's
on.
there is a lot to be said about like ecstatic dance, and
Oh yeah.
obviously you and me and a lot of our friends and a lot of our connections are very, in Ithaca there's a big, they have ecstatic dance like a couple times a week, and
Yeah.
all my friends do DJing for that type of story, and I have personally participated in it many many times, and I know that just moving your body, similar to yoga or just, any kind of movement, but ecstatic dance in particular, with music. So that's like double the effects,
Yeah.
between the music in the healing and also the movement in the healing. I think really, really keeps your energy flowing in a balanced way, and
Yeah.
it's very releasing, like there's, all different ways your body can release, but those are two like really healthy, like proactive ways to
And
get your
free.
body
Free
and
or
free.
affordable. Like if you couldn't go to ecstatic dance, you can play music somewhere.
It's true. It's true. I remember like when my kids were little, I would turn on the radio or turn on music and we would just dance around the room. And like this was something that like they were really little and I taught them. And I think they immediately got accustomed to liking music from a
Yeah.
very young age because that's, I introduced them to that kind of thing. And, I've seen close friends of mine introduce their daughter into to static dance and music since she was like an infant. And like
Wow.
when I see Chloe, my friend's child, go out and dance, she ecstatic dances like an adult does because
Wow. That's so cool.
close to it. She just turned 5 in June, and she's been exposed to that kind of dancing her entire since she's been born, and she's
Wow.
always been around music, and it's just amazing to see what that kind of cultivation
Hmm.
has brought her. And like she doesn't have any fear like a lot of little kids. If you bring them to an ecstatic dance and they've never been to one, they're going to be very like kind of nervous and
Right.
not know
It's
where to
weird.
go. And it's yeah, and they're going to be kind of little like stage fright until they get used to it. But like Chloe, like she could go to any dance anywhere and she would know, she would just dance with everyone. There would be no awkwardness from her,
Yeah.
which is pretty amazing, to be that young and to be that like free. And I mean, most kids are free anyway, but like, it just really depends on like what you're around, what you've been raised as.
Yes, because I don't live in an area where there is ecstatic dance all the time. And again, I live in an area I'm in the Bible Belt. Okay. So
Wow.
like you have
Wow.
oh yeah, I don't know. I'm called here. Otherwise I'd be out of here. Okay. You have the Episcopalians and Swanee and Montego, you got the Baptist and whatever else, and you got the liberals in this area, you got the Republicans, and it's just such a weird place to be. And I'm right in the middle, but I can tell you that dance is something that's really needed and it's not happening here. And if I say the word dance, I see fear.
Wow.
Fear.
You know what that reminds me of, Anneli?
Why?
Did you ever see that movie Footloose?
Oh yeah, of course.
That totally reminds me of that movie Footloose because like I remember they just wanted to dance and like
Yes.
it was like there was like so much fear like oh my gosh you can't dance like
Yeah.
no that's against our religion.
Right. Or just judgment, or people will tell me I can't dance, or someone made fun of them. And it just and people don't feel free. They feel locked. They they are like constricted. They're kind of like there's a lot of like repression of energy of just of a lot of things. And so it's really, but if you give people enough alcohol in some context, they might dance. But I mean, I guess, hey, whatever it takes. But if you could do it without a substance, how freeing is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm alone
Well,
here. I feel alone. There's like
I
3 or 4 people who come to my dance, and that's fine. It's something, but it is not the same. So when we were at Pyro and I was dancing with all those beautiful people, I was like, oh my God, this
yeah,
is
I do
amazing.
I do feel like though like I have to say like I do feel in general, maybe not in your area, obviously, because it is rural and stuff, but I do feel overall it's getting a lot more mainstream and a
Yeah.
lot more accepted and a lot more known. Like, I don't know what podcasts you follow or like what ones are like in your list on YouTube, but there's a gentleman that I watch, Aubrey Marcus, and like
Oh yeah.
I know he like from day one has always talked about ecstatic dance
Yeah.
and I remember thinking like, wow, like I didn't think it was that mainstream. And then like he's a pretty mainstream podcaster, at least at this point,
Yeah.
he didn't start off mainstream, obviously. But I do feel like I feel like it's starting to be a story that is like accepted just like yoga or
Totally.
like some of these other healing modalities. It's subtly being, pushed into those realms, which it's good that we're speaking about it, because I'm sure there's people even in my area that
Yeah.
don't understand or know what a static dance is. I know that there was some friends of mine that I got connected to at a Krishna temple, and I know they have started to go to Ithaca to go
Mm,
to the ecstatic dances, and
right.
they were really excited to be involved in that. And I think one of the things that's really cool about the ecstatic dance, the Ithaca, that they all hold, is they have this policy that you don't have to like you could have you beforehand. They sit in a circle and they talk about boundaries, and if you want to be touched or don't want to be touched, or how there's
Yeah.
so many different ways that you can orchestrate these dances so
Yeah.
everyone can feel comfortable. And I
Totally.
think that's really, really important, because I know that sometimes people make the assumption that when you go to something like this, that it's like a free for all, and like
No.
there's boundaries, there's
Yeah.
rules, and people are really, really good at following it. I've never been to an ecstatic dance where anybody's ever like, had to be kicked out or
No.
didn't follow the rules or anything like that.
They're so respectful. I feel like it's a really respectful community. And the one in San Francisco, the rules were, there's no talking and there's no touching unless you make eye contact and get consent from someone that you would like to dance. Otherwise, everyone's just doing their own thing. So it was just like we're just all moving, and that's what everyone's there for. Like it's like their church in a way. Well, the one I went to was in a church on Sunday, so it was very much like my, because I don't go to church, and I want to. That's more of a healing spiritual experience to me. So
I want to ask you too, Anneli, because I don't know, I think a lot of people know, but maybe not as many as we think really understand about the healing hypnosis, the quantum
yeah,
healing hypnosis. I personally am versed in it because, like I told you before, I was going to go down that path and I didn't
right.
end up pulling the trigger as far as paying for the class and doing it, but I'm very, very well versed. But I don't think everybody actually understands what that's all about. So I was just wondering if maybe you could explain a little bit what that's all about so people like our viewers can understand that a little bit more.
Sure. So Dolores Cannon was the founder of this technique, and she was, before she died, I mean, one of the most famous hypnotherapists. She started in a time when hypnotherapy was not popular, discovered this technique over working with lots of people, and discovered that people were going into past lives. And she discovered you could lead people to the deepest state of trance, which she called the somnambulistic. And a lot of hypnotherapists wouldn't go there because they said weird stuff happens. And she said that's where the good stuff happens. But now the
Yeah.
goal in quantum healing hypnosis technique, well, you come with questions, and it's a pretty long thing. You want to get to know the person. What are they really doing there? Who are they? And they bring questions, and then you guide them into a relaxed state of trance or alpha to theta brainwave state. And then she called it your subconscious, but this is not the subconscious like Freud was talking about. So a better term might just be like, I don't know, the higher power, or just some really great, powerful energy that's all knowing. So you're accessing that, and that energy will bring you the life that's most relevant to what you're doing there. And then, so yeah, you're experiencing this life, and you're led through the death experience, and maybe you have a few more. But the real goal is after that to access again this subconscious, because that has access to all of your life, everyone's life, and it can do healing. And as long as the practitioner isn't limited in their beliefs. And so because they're already in a really deeply relaxed place, that's when she discovered people were healing from miraculous things. They would say, oh, this person, they have this going on, they have this in their kidney and this and this and this. And then she'd say, can you work on it? And they said yes. And they would heal it. And then after the session, people were, you could see, let's say they had trouble walking, they could walk, or they'd come back and their life was just changed. It was changed.
Because basically it went, was it like, when you say they, who do you mean they went into their bodies? Like who?
They is that subconscious. That's what she called the subconscious, but you might just call it, some might call it God, but it's not really, it's so complicated, all these words we use. Another word might be, I don't know, you might think of it in like some other density complex that gets into like this law of one, or I don't know. And then they said they don't care what you call it. Okay, they don't care. It's real. You can access it, and you have to ask permission. Can we access the subconscious of Jill Butler? And it'll say yes, and that at that point you're under in this relaxed state. But then typically the person starts talking in a third person. And it's not like you've left your body or anything. Sometimes people are aware, or they're just a little off to the side, and this energy is communicating through you, just communicating. It's with you all the time. It sees you. It wants to help you. And
so it feels to me like for the common person, it would be like you would tell them maybe their higher self is like
their higher self, or
tapping into their higher self,
their bigger self,
their bigger self that has sort of the mechanisms that can tweak their bodies and go into different parts of their bodies. And it sounds a lot, it sounds similar to, like, I always think of Joe Dispenza and what he does, and how his work when he gets people in in these states that he's able to help them walk in and do different things to their bodies, just like he did to himself when he healed his back and stuff. So these are really, really powerful things, and powerful methods that people can use. And I think the one thing that I think is really, really important is none of these things can work unless you believe them. So I think that's a very, very good point that we should make about anything that we speak about, is that you have to first engage with the belief of it, and you have to accept there's a lot of things that both we'll discuss on the show and that just exist, that if you can't believe them, then you can't even step into anything deeper. So opening the mind and keeping the mind free of preconceived notions and ideas of what other people have told you, and kind of just like let that go and try to come into our show and these talks into like as a blank slate of just like, let me feel into this, let me let me hear what they're saying, and then if it feels like it resonates, and your body and your person, your energy is ready to accept it, then you can go from there, because it's so important to believe, to have the belief to begin with, to have the understanding and say, yes, this can be true, this does exist. And then once you get into that zone and that place, then anything, in my opinion, is possible.
There's infinite potentials. We're the only ones limiting us. And as Cryon said, he's a channeled energy as well, and he said humans could fly, but they won't. That was one of the, but maybe they will one day.
Listen, I know lots of things are coming.
Oh my God.
How fast, and in human terms this is all going to be is more the question mark, and how much
is a big question mark. It is a big question mark. I have a friend who does remote viewing. I assume you're familiar with that. And I like how he describes it. He said he goes into a meditative state, And then he imagines he's looking through a window. Like you could even imagine like you're in an airplane and you're looking out a window, and then you're he's stopping at a particular actual coordinate, like, like 3.10 or whatever. And then he just looks out the window and maybe he'll take notes and then zoom to another one because it's different from other things. But he's been telling me for 6 years, that's how long we've known each other. I mean, he doesn't like remote viewing. It changes. The collective is constantly changing. We make new choices, but keeps talking about like something big is coming in 2024 and then onwards. And there was one point a few years ago where my mom got freaked out, and so now we have hundreds of pounds of rice and oats and stored very properly. So either soon or 30 years from now, we can open it and we have rice, beans, and so I don't know what's happening.
You can never have too much, huh, Anneli? You can never have
I don't
too
know
much.
about eating rice every day. Well, we didn't get all those spices. If you have no spices and you're eating that, man, I don't know.
I am with you on that, sister. If you don't have any hot pepper or any hot sauce,
Or cinnamon.
I'm gonna have a hard time existing with food.
I know. I'll be like, you know what? Maybe all that training being anorexic was for a deeper meaning. I'm fine not eating. Talk about getting high. Woo.
It's funny that we're talking about not eating because a friend of mine at work, actually, her name is Jocelyn. She actually was telling me today that she was going to do a 3-day fast. And we were talking about the benefits of fasting. And I said to her, I really like down the road for you to come on to my podcast. And I'd like for you to talk about that, because a lot of people that do fasting do all these different kinds of like requirements to get through it. Like they do all these things, like they drink certain things, they they have to do it when they're not working, like all these different protocols, which I'm not naysaying anything that people do, like for whatever makes someone feel comfortable is what they should do. But I just found it really interesting that she was just like, oh no, I just drink water with lemon, that's it. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's super interesting. And I was like, she's like, after 24 hours, she goes, at first, you're a little bit hangry, after, before the 24 hours is up. And she goes, then after the 24 hours, for her, we're speaking of her experience, she doesn't have any real issues for the 3 days. And then after the 3 days, she'll start to introduce small foods. And I won't get into it too much because that's for another podcast. But I just find it really super interesting about how people have the misconception that if they don't have food and they don't eat food in a certain conventional way, like so much food in so many hours and all these like boxes that we as humanity have created, people really get in their minds about what is healthy and what is not healthy. And there's been so many studies on people that have been sick, and when they didn't eat or barely ate, they actually healed themselves. And a lot of people think that they got healed just because, oh, the virus or the thing saw its course. But I think personally, and I can say it from my own experience in my life, that when I don't feel well and I stop eating, like I'll just have like soup or barely nothing, like broth or just like hot tea for 2 or 3 days, I know I personally feel better within 2 to 3 days.
Yep.
So what are your feelings? Not to get into like, any sort of like, just, nothing, we don't want to talk about anything too extreme because we're not trying to encourage that, but I definitely want people to be aware of like the possibilities.
I don't know. I think that I've learned to listen to my body because of my past experiences I had of being anorexic and healing from that. What's most important to me is just to listen and honor that. And that can be harder because most people are really out of touch. And then they might just focus on someone told me this, or I read a book, or I heard someone did this. And that's great and all, but what about how's it feeling in your body? So you noticed after not eating for a little bit, maybe you felt clearer, there was more energy, because when you're eating all the time, your energy is going towards digesting. And so that's not a great spiritual state. That's why a lot of people say if you're going to meditate when you do yoga, be on an empty stomach, just so you can receive and move those energies. But for me, I don't ascribe to anything because I find it limiting or triggering. And I think just eat some food. God damn it. That's my first message.
Well, I also think there's something interesting that I've discussed in my friend groups is that sometimes, and I feel like that I've kind of felt this way for myself, sometimes eating food has made me be able to be more grounded. So
Totally.
like I live in realms sometimes where I'm like way high up in the sky and way like thinking and being in ways that aren't as much human. And I
Yeah.
know that like I came here to be human and that's
Yeah,
why I'm
exactly.
here.
Yeah.
So so sometimes I think that I eat and I feel like when I have food in my body, I do feel grounded. So
Yeah.
I wonder what you feel about that.
Yeah, I definitely feel more grounded when I eat. And with all these new energies, and June was intense, just in general, there's all this stuff happening on lots of levels. And I found recently that my eating is definitely affected in a way that there was a period of time where I think I was definitely going through a huge like transformation. And during that period, I actually didn't feel very hungry. And so I just ate less, and I always drink lots of water, and then it was fine. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just moving through this period right now. And then when that period ended, then I was like, I'm really hungry. And then I assumed my body was maybe needing that to ground that energy in. And so food will ground you. And of course, if you eat like meat or anything like that, it'll really bring you down. So it just depends. What do you want to be doing? If you're wanting to reach a super high multi-dimensional state, you probably wouldn't eat a hamburger right before. But if you can still access that state and eat it, then you're doing really well.
Yeah, that's funny. And like there's like so many different concepts of like, you know, fruitarian,
Yeah.
breatharian, like there's so many like people out there that have all these different ideas that
Yeah.
I mean they're not for me. For
Yeah.
sure. They're not for me. But it is very interesting to me to actually recognize and realize how many different ways that people interact with food or not interact with food. And
Yeah.
I find it actually really interesting because I mean if you think about all the different kinds of diets, and
Yep.
I think one of the points that you brought up that I think that I feel very important to me is I eat what I feel. Like so like
Yeah.
I may feel like one day I may feel like, oh my gosh, I need a bunch of turmeric tea. It's like, all right, my body's inflamed and I need
Yeah.
to like work on my inflammation. Or I might feel like, you know, there might be something brewing in my body and I'll be like, all of a sudden I'll need a lot of ginger or
Yeah.
I'll need you know, some honey. Like and whatever my body tells me I need, I just systematically eat that, you know,
Yep.
and one of the things that I almost always eat all the time because it my body always likes it is I eat a lot of greens. Like I know
Yeah.
my body wants and needs a lot of greens, but what I've really been sort of like being more guided to lately that I never used to be as guided to is I've been very much more wanting fruits like
Yeah.
mangoes and like
Mm.
exotic fruits and like
Fresh fruit.
very very guided to
Yeah.
eat those on the regular.
Yeah.
And so like whenever I'm guided to eat something I usually look up like the properties and the minerals
Hmm.
that are in it, and then I feel like okay, for whatever reason I might just my body just might need more of that or whatever.
It just
And
does. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's great that you have that, because I know I interact with a lot of people who are not in touch. That's why when I might briefly just talk about these things very lightly in a way, I can tell that people are not really in touch with that. So that's why this could be a tool to access different realms or not, or just to be present in your life and to be well, because your body is a miraculous healing instrument that can do so many things if we don't poison it. Or if we listen, it's always communicating to us. It's like you stubbed your toe, that meant something. You didn't stop. Now this is broken. Next thing you know, do you want to be hit in the head by a 2x4, maybe literally, physically, or just on your ass? That's the most extreme. The universe was communicating first very subtly, and then just got louder and louder because people aren't paying attention. I like
Yeah,
to pay attention before this giant thing. And a lot of the people I interact with, again, they get sick in whatever way, and then they finally rest. And it's
right.
like, you could not manifest illness to just rest. But again, that goes back to some of this conditioning we have of like, go, 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 work, 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 work. If you're not doing something, you're not productive, you're not successful. And it's also a very masculine quality that can be in men and women. And so learning to relax, that's my whole thing I got going on here. I'm a professional relaxer.
That's so cute. Yeah,
I've worked hard to do that, which is a contradiction.
I know it's a paradox in
It
itself.
is a paradox, but
It is. Yeah, I feel like there's so many components to feeling healthy, because a lot of times when people meet me, they don't believe my age, and they always
mhm,
want to pin me down to what it is I do. And it's not one thing. Like, it's
it's
so
not one thing.
many things. Like, there's so many things I do on a daily basis to
Yep.
keep myself balanced and happy. And like, I truly love myself. And I don't
Yep.
mean that in some sort of narcissistic way. I mean that in like a reverent, like, I love my body. I appreciate my body. I appreciate what it does. I
Yeah.
appreciate that it affords me this existence. And I talk to myself in those kind of ways on a
Yeah, it's
daily
important.
basis.
It's
And
very important.
it is, but I feel like so many people don't recognize the value of their thoughts alone, and what those thoughts can do for their day-to-day living. It's like,
Yeah.
what you tell
Right.
yourself, like what
Yeah.
you tell yourself you're sick, if you tell yourself you don't feel well, if you tell yourself you're tired, if you create this pattern within yourself and you keep telling yourself, that's what you are,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. And that's the whole thought field therapy, which obviously the big names, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, and all of them, they're on it. Louise Hay, it's a big thing now. It's more and more popular. But I have a sample here of people who are just, I mean, we're all average people, right? But, like, they're not big city. They haven't been exposed as much to some of these concepts. And so I'm planting seeds here about all of that in the way that I talk in class. Or I even had a woman, she's 72, and she said, oh yes, I hear your sweet voice in my head, and you're saying beautiful things to me, like, oh yes, you deserve to relax. And I'm like, wow, like, that's amazing to hear that she's being positively influenced, and that and sometimes you might need it to be someone else's voice, or imagine that, because your own voice, I mean, it all sounds like you, but if you imagine someone like, what would Anneli say, or oh, what would this person say to me right now? And it can be, it's a tool I use with people, actually, as a way to like heal the voices in your head, not schizophrenia, but just like we all have these characters. And
Yeah.
that's a tool that I've used in the past in my healing journey. I was like, who's going to be on my team? Because my own voice is not on my team. It's really judgmental. It's really mean. It's so, oh my, negative. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to have Ralph Waldo Emerson. I'm related to him. He's like, trust yourself and you're knowing, and he'll be up there. And then I thought, I'll have not Beyonce, what's the model lady, I forget her name, but she's African American, but she did America's Next Top Model, Tyra Banks. Terrifying. I'm not into that stuff, but I thought she's strong, fierce woman who would tell that voice, oh no, she's beautiful. How dare you? Oh no. And then I thought, okay, and then who else will be up there? Pema Chodron, peace. And then that helped me because when I was feeling low, I just imagined these characters up there and how they would talk. And I imagine that's how I'm talking to myself. And then it was hilarious to imagine all of those three people together.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe it wouldn't happen. And so that's another tool that I've used. Like, how do you change that voice in your head? Because the way you're speaking, like you said, is influencing you. And I can see, because people, you can tell a lot about a person of where they are by how they talk about themselves, because it shows up immediately. And it doesn't mean I'm going to comment on it unless they're asking me. And you don't want to, and then, as a Sagittarius, they're like, are you sure you want to ask me?
Do you want truth?
Yeah.
Or do you not want truth?
Do you like a sharp blade and arrow?
I know. But I do believe, and we've discussed this privately, that there is a need for that kind of truth. Yes. And we our signs are the ones that bring that. Totally. There's a couple other signs that do, but I don't know if they do quite as intensely as we do. Which is, it's kind of cool though that we are both Sagittarians, because I think so. I don't have a lot of female Sagittarian friends. Oh, so really? When we met each other, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, to have a fellow Sagittarian friend. And then when you agreed to do this with me, I was like, wow, this is going to be quite the conversation that we both.
Yeah, right. I think it's cool. I mean, I find that Sagittarius really tend to get along well together and have just good conversations. And I have quite a few Sagittarius. Oliver is a Sagittarius. He's 4 days away from my birthday. And then my mother-in-law has the same birthday as me.
That's wild.
I'm telling you, I swear to God that before we came in, it was just a giant, like, we're gonna fuck with you type of thing. Like, as from above, ha ha ha, I'm gonna be in this position and I'm gonna be like this dragon, and we're gonna really work on some stuff, and we're gonna have the same birthday, and you're gonna laugh about it. It's a giant joke.
It's funny because you have a lot of Sagittarius, but like I have a lot of Cancer. Like I have a lot of Cancer. Like my son's a Cancer, my dad's a Cancer, my brother's a Cancer. The last two relationships I had were Cancers. Wow. So I am like, I just feel like somehow or another that Cancer is something that works well with my energy. It really does work well with it. So I feel like, it's interesting. And that's like another topic. We'll get into astrology, because I'm sure we both have, a lot to discuss on that. But do you have a few more minutes, or when do you want to call this quits? It's totally up to you. We just hit the hour mark.
Okay.
I have a few more. Over an hour. It's like 7:18 or something. So we're about over hour and 20 minutes, 18 minutes, something like that.
Or less. Didn't we start at my time 5:30? Maybe it's been 50 minutes. Well, whatever it is, I have a little more time if you do.
You're right. We start at 6:30. I don't know why. Yeah. I'm getting my times mixed up here. We start at 6:30.
Because it's not real.
I know. Time isn't real. Let's get this time that's not real straight, Anneli.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why when I spend time with my friend David, he is a very interesting person. I have never met someone who speaks this language, and I can't speak his language, but we get along. We can understand each other, but he's operating an extremely high level. And he's just the most humble person. If you saw him, you'd have no freaking clue, except that he's possibly levitating. But what was you just saying the other day? He's like, I don't operate on linear time. And he doesn't. He's not. I mean, but he's also blessed to not have to, he doesn't have to work. He doesn't have to, he's just floating around.
Yeah, that's that's the goal. I mean, we don't want to float too much. Like it's
No.
such it's such a tricky it's such a tricky paradox because I feel like a lot of people in like the spiritual like realms want to like in spirituality, like they want to constantly talk about like raising and going into these different higher dimensions
Right.
and I too want to experience those kind of energies. So I'm not trying to disrespect or downplay it, but I also feel like we all came here because we wanted to be human. And
Exactly.
we all wanted to be physically dense enough to be in a human body for the contrast, to be
Yep.
able to understand the contrasts. So I hope what we both come up with, and I hope, the show is gonna both express and explain and help people in the awakening process and the
Hmm.
evolutionary consciousness shifting, but also not try to dismiss and or discredit what it is to be human, because I know that part of my I think the thing that I've always sort of had to work on since I've incarnated in this life has always been to find a way to embrace it, because I feel like when since I was little I was very uncomfortable with it.
Yep.
Like I never felt like I fit into it all. And then as I've gotten older and as I've learned to embrace it, I'm like, you came here on purpose. Like you came
Yep.
here for this. So
Yeah.
stop trying to discredit or disown it. Just
Yeah.
embody it. And so I hope that that's something that we can also help people understand, that it's a paradox. It's a double-edged sword. Like you want to grow and evolve and become, but you also want to embrace and be grateful for the physical body.
Yeah. Well, you can't go higher unless your roots grow deeper, which means being present.
Amen.
So we have a same struggle. I think a lot of people in that when you were talking with Todd Medina, he was talking about, all the people, the same story, had abilities, were aware, childhoods, had to suppress it, something happened, and then hopefully you remember, and then you're like, oh, I'm here for a reason. And that's why I'm really focused on the day to day, what I'm doing. I am of service to my community, and taking care of myself. Like that's something that's really important to me, and not to just float away of like, that's why I actually don't absorb high amounts of like information. I have, and I do at certain times, but I'm really into just um being in my own space, and then just being with all of that. And then I do stuff with sound, but not getting more and more voices and things, but just like, how can I just be myself, whoever that is, and then shine my light and do what I'm called to do, which here I am doing all this work, offering these things to people. Like that's what's important. I don't need to worry about going to the astral realm and doing stuff that already happens at night. I'm already from those places. I'll go back to these places. Like you said, I came here to help, and I'm not helping anyone if I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be a member of society. Or, oh, I'm just going to be like this. It's like, yeah, but you're doing something here. I don't know what you're doing. I can only speak for myself, but like, I think it's important to do it.
Yeah, and like also not like it's like I'm very like open and loving and kind and reciprocating to people that want to experience different things, okay? So
Totally.
like I'm all about like people having their journeys, but I feel like sometimes people get trapped in those
Yeah.
external journeys, and they just keep searching externally
Yes.
instead of going internally. And like because so many people are into like ayahuasca and like all these like psychedelics, and like I said before, I'm totally not opposed and or against to people having experiences, but I do feel like a lot of times those kind of experiences can be very distracting
Yep.
and not and make you not do the internal work. And I feel like
Yes.
the internal work, you don't need any substances to tap in. I mean, yeah,
No.
you know some of the substances might give you a different perspective of that, but
Yep.
it's not, you don't need them. It's not a
You don't need them.
necessity.
it's just a door, and some people like that door, and I've known people who are really attached to that door. Like, I need this in order to feel this or do this, and it's not true. But if you want to use those things and then make sure you integrate it, and then what about how are you living on a day-to-day basis?
Amen.
That's what's most important. I don't care what you're saying, what you're doing, and the vibe that you're actually emitting is what's important. And you can tell, I can tell, because I know a lot of things, and all the clairs, which, that's a whole nother thing. And that doesn't, I mean, and that's not special. Everyone can have different things, but like, I happen to know and sense a lot about someone. And so I can tell like things immediately. And again, I'm not saying anything to them, but it just lets me know, oh, okay. Yeah. And sometimes women seem to maybe have a easier access to start doing this work, maybe because we're in tune with our bodies because of our cycles, or I don't know, maybe just because men and women are different. It doesn't, I mean, I know a lot of men who do this, but just in my own family, like I have older brothers, I'm the one who's done all this internal healing work. And one in particular is being presented with, you need to move to the emotional level of healing. It's time. And if you don't, the physical is not the way to heal this thing anymore. And it's because it brings up all those feelings, which feelings people want to avoid because it hurts. When I had that experience from June, I thought I was going to die, like for real. The level of pain I experienced, because it was lifetimes and all this stuff, I've never experienced that in my entire life. I was in so much pain. It was agony. And my heart, my physical heart at one point, it was hurting in a way that if I hadn't known and been aware, I might have been like, do I need to like go to a doctor? Because I don't have one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like the tool is being with your feelings. And that's why there's so many people out there. I mean, you know, who talk about like sitting with that uncomfortableness, like particularly Pema Chodron, like that's what you're supposed to sit with it and breathe,
Yeah.
feel. Again, if you want to move or emote, and that's like all somatic therapy and stuff like that, any or all of those. And when you allow the emotions to flow, then things don't have to build up and become a tumor, become some big thing. It's just like, let's address this a little bit sooner. Like, you can feel.
Yeah.
Safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that another trick or another key to longevity and that goes along with what you're saying, is like dealing with things as they come, and
Yes.
part of dealing with them is feeling them.
Yep.
So like when something comes up uncomfortable, you have an uncomfortable situation with someone,
Yep.
because it triggers something or whatever, it's then you look at it right then and there. Like, you don't stuff it down, you don't drink it down, you don't drug it down. You
Yep.
literally look at it as it comes up and you say, this is not feeling good. This experience right here is not feeling good to me. All right,
Mm.
what is this about deeper? Why did I bring this up? Why did I bring this to my consciousness? Why did I allow this suffering to come in? Or what is it that I'm suffering from? Is it
Right.
ancestrally? Is it, is it something from earlier in my life? Is it childhood? Is it, these recurring patterns that compound every time you have a scenario again and again that you repeat in a loop. You're just making it stronger and stronger and stronger. And if you do, like you said, it can build up into your body, make you have, be sick, have cancer, whatever. There's all, like, when you keep stuffing it down and just letting it reoccur in another suffering and another suffering and another suffering, that's when it gets out of control. Like,
Yeah.
if something comes up and you deal with it right then and there, and you look at it and you feel it and you allow it,
Yep.
and not run from it, I think those are kind of very serious keys to longevity as a human.
Totally. It is. It's very important. That was a mantra: feel, deal, let go.
Mm-hmm. That's very
And
good.
yeah,
Good one.
so that's something that I'm talking about to anyone who I work with in another context, as I do energy healing, sound healing, and all of this. And usually that ends up just coming up. And so, people are becoming more aware, and it is becoming more mainstream. And if that's all that someone focused on is their thoughts, because the thoughts are connected to the feelings, and they're firing and wiring together and all this stuff, and there's, like, there's so much science. I'm not a science person. I'm very abstract. I'm like, let's have an experience.
Right.
I want to help someone get into a relaxed, coherent brainwave state. I don't tell them that shit. Like, I have one woman, she's like, I don't know what you're doing to me in there. That's how she's every time. I don't know what you're doing into me there, but I like it. And then she tries to say, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. No, I mean, I how do you feel? Point it back to their experience. Like, you don't worry about what I'm doing. I hardly know what I'm doing. I mean, like, I am aware what I'm doing. This shit sounds insane. If I start to tell you, it's gonna get real weird. Your sound went away.
This up. I don't do as much as you do as far as for money. But I do a lot of things for a lot of people, and sometimes they know I'm doing things and sometimes they don't.
Right.
And sometimes it's better that way. They definitely understand that my energy is important for them. And so they want to be around it, and they're definitely connected to it, but they don't always know what I'm doing. And sometimes I do eventually tell them things, and then sometimes I don't. It just really does depend on what I'm guided to do and say with each individual person.
Yeah, that's usually irrelevant. Like, again, I channel energy. Can I be a clear vessel for that? And really, for me, what is happening, it's like, it's laws of physics or entrainment or music. Those are all the same. And so you can overcome and entrain. One vibration overcomes and entrains a weaker one. And weaker doesn't mean better. It's just that if I have a strong, coherent vibration, you will become entrained to my energy. And that happens when you listen to music. That happens when you listen to singing bowls. Within 30 seconds to 1 minute, whatever you're listening to, your brain is entrained to it. They can show this on all their little scans and EEGs. So that's really what's happening in energy healing, is you're merging. Well, I'm definitely merging. I don't know that everyone merges, but merging with their energies, and then you can move it. And then, stuff that, again, then it does become a little more multidimensional, because it's not stuff that, it's like these felt, it's really hard to describe vibrations. This vibration and that vibration, those words aren't good enough.
I feel like that's a whole different level of conversation that not potentially everybody is going to be ready for. And that's not a disrespect. That's just reality. Like, that's just the reality of, it's almost like the way that we sometimes, I mean, we have to come at it from an angle that for every man, because I feel like we have no idea who is going to watch this or who's not. And so I try to keep it as elementary as I can in certain aspects, not that I don't want people to learn or experience deeper, and our words alone are codes. So people are getting codes no matter what we say or don't say. So but I'm like, there's so much depth to it. Like, like I always try to say to people, like, when I talk about certain topics with them, I'm like, it just is infinite. Like, it's not there's no like ending point or like cutoff point where you can just say, oh yeah, this is where it ends and that's it. And that's the last place. It's just, it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes. And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of how far you want to go.
Exactly. That is the choice of each person in their life. And that's
True
just
that.
fine with me. That's why, like, when people, I don't care what you're doing, like, and that's not like I'm not a not caring person, but like, I am not this person. That's why I never understand when people are like, look, they're eating, why do you care what they're eating? It's not your body. It's not going to affect you, and you telling them something about what they're doing is not going to change them, so just get over it and just
Yeah.
relax and eat a piece of pie already.
Well, yeah, the thing that I've learned over the years, especially in my older age years, is that leading by example is always the best teacher. Like,
Yeah,
it's never about telling people what to do. It's more about like, hey, this is what I do and this is what works for me. And hey, if you want to try it out and give it a shot, I'm willing to give you some information of some things that work for me. And
yeah,
that's where I try to come across for people is more like, hey, I've lived a life a certain way, ABC, and
hmm,
if this helps you, by all means, let me help you. And I think one of the purposes of this podcast and me continuing it and having different guests on is I want to have a resource for
yeah,
people to be able to step into different realms and get information and learn about things that they might have a curiosity in, but they
right,
might not have really stepped in deep into it yet. And I want to have different resources for people to be able to learn different things. And I
yeah,
have enough of a group of humans that I'm connected to that I could have endless shows. Like, I could have
that's great.
shows until the end of time and still have more shows. So I know that there's a lot of people that are looking for a lot of things. And if I
Yeah,
can offer somebody something through this show, then that's, and like us having this continuous talk. I
right,
love this organic, just chatting, not having any certain thing that we need to discuss, but just having a bunch of things come through, I feel
right.
like is really really important.
Yeah,
you know
because I think people are hungry for things they don't even know, and they don't know how to describe, but they're looking because everyone is awakening, and it's so obvious now, and everyone's in a completely different place, and some people have no tools at all, because what if you just were like, whoa, what's going on, and they don't have any tools in their tool belt. And so that's really what I'm all about, and all the work I do is giving people tools. I don't want you to rely on me. I want you to rely on yourself, and I want you to set yourself up for success, because like you're not always going to be near me. I don't want you to call me all the time. I want you to go into yourself. And that's where I'm always pointing people, hey, this is an internal journey. These are things that you're going to have to deal with. I can tell you something, but ultimately this is something you're going to decide within yourself.
Yeah, and ultimately people have to experience things on their
Yep,
own. And
they
they
do.
have to go through things to really have them stick within themselves. But I know, like, I just know myself, and I was telling Todd this. I don't know if it was the show that he had me on, or him being on my podcast, but I remember one of those shows I just said to him, I was like, listen, like, I was in a really bad, vulnerable place. And I had watched one of your shows,
Mm,
literally 5 years ago. And because he has so many different people on with so many
right.
different topics. And he had a gentleman on that was like a spiritual worker. He was Huna, and that's like a conversation for a whole nother day. But the bottom line was I got introduced to him through
Mm,
Todd's show. And if Todd didn't have him on and Todd didn't do the show, then I wouldn't have had that availability to have a piece of healing that I needed in that time,
totally.
because I needed that healing from that specific human in a
Yep.
very specific way. And if I didn't turn that show on and Todd didn't have that show on, then I would have potentially had a much harder journey, and I
Yeah.
was already going through a hard journey. So I was actually pulled out of that hard journey by watching that show. So
Yeah.
it's and that to me like told me a lot about like, and I've always had a bunch of friends of mine that always said to me over the years, like, Jill, you really need to do a podcast. Like, you need to share the information that you're giving me, that you're giving your friends, that you're not, it needs to be felt by a lot of people. And I kept saying, no, no, no. Like, I don't want to go in the public eye. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be known. I don't want to have anybody that follows me. I just want to do my thing. And then just recently, and Todd was talking about this the other day, is that a lot of women in a specific age group that have done work for as long as I have, for like 30
Hmm.
years, they're actually being very pushed that they
Yep.
have to be in the front right now, and they have to be guiding, the younger people, and they have to be
Yeah.
giving the lessons and the teachings, and that they can't be any more in the back. And
Right.
like, and a lot of women that have never ever been on camera, never ever talked to many people at once, are feeling that they have to do this, that it's not a
Yeah.
choice,
I
not
feel
an
it.
ego, it's not an ego driven thing, it's
No.
not for fame or money or anything, it's merely for the fact that it's part of their purpose, like the
Yes.
the you know what I mean, the time frame that we came in and what we were supposed to do, like right now we have to do this. And so that's
Hmm.
part of like my mission to have this podcast, is for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, I feel it. I'm 38, but I've kind of fast tracked my whatever, because I realized, whoa, I got some stuff to do here as a soul. And I just remembered, and it's very apparent to me that, we're all here to share. I'm here to help raise the vibration and shift this consciousness. And that's incredibly important to me because I actually do have remembrances of past lives and other things, which sometimes is harder. Like, is this helping me? Especially if other people have no idea and you're like, oh, well, that's disappointing. But so, like, I chose to come back here. I didn't necessarily need to come here, but as Dolores said, there was a great call out into the galaxies. Earth needs help. Who will help? And then all these souls were called to come and help. And then, of course, you forget, and, hopefully you can remember. And then it can be hard because being in a body and being in this density comes with the challenges, all the feelings, and it's just different. And so navigating that, and something I'm really into, and I think you would be into, is that I'm not into, like, I'm not always positive. There's lows and you feel all of those, but being a space that focuses on that, because I've seen a lot of, like, spiritual or new age people talking, and I've actually stopped tuning into them because I just feel like they're really in a fearful state or negative, but I feel like they think they're really informing people of something, but I don't think it's a very high perspective. I think they've just fallen down a spiral. Like, if it's all an infinite spiral, where are you going, up or down? i'm
Right.
i'm going towards the light. I've always been of the light. I'm a light worker. I'm not into the black magic.
Well, it comes down to, even if you don't want to use boxes like that, it comes down to
Yeah.
love and fear. Like, love and
Well,
fear.
yes,
Like,
I choose love.
I'm on the path of love, and a lot of people are on the path of fear. And like,
Yeah.
sometimes fear does produce a catalyst for people, and it does help
Yeah.
them grow. But like for me, I don't. That doesn't help me grow. Love helps me grow. That's
Yeah.
that's what grows me. And so
Yeah.
that's the energy and the vortex that I spin in, is in
Yes.
that bringing people together, not
Yeah.
separating, but
Right.
bringing people together.
There's a lot of let's not go too far into this, but, like, there's been a lot of divisive energy since the COVID times. And just today a friend was still talking to me of, like, oh, this, it's this whole shit of vax versus unvax, and I don't want to really go there, but the point is,
Oh.
it's still divided. And
Mm-hmm.
whether you're from this side or that side, it's really divided. I'm like, that is not the answer.
I know.
Higher, higher, love, higher. It doesn't matter. Higher. Let's go higher. You're getting stuck. Again, they're just stuck. And that's okay because they can always get unstuck. But if you look at stuff that is very fearful and alluring and pointing your perception into one corner instead of being like,
Yeah.
remember, it's vast and
Well,
I'm just looking one place.
and I think the thing that has helped me in that always is always the thing that one of the I pick like a particular word and I'll just like work that word to death. Like I'll
Yeah,
incorporate it in everything I do. And one of the words that I've always used and I've particularly have been, using it a lot in the last couple of years is just balance. Like
balance.
everything that I do and everything that I want to accomplish and everything that I want to be is in balance. And
Yeah.
so that really helps you. And another equally good phrase that helps me is divine neutrality. And so
Mm,
divine neutrality doesn't take sides. So
right.
neutrality in itself just means being neutral, meaning everything counts equally. So
Yep.
divine neutrality is just basically looking at it from a loving neutrality place. And that's how
Hmm.
I try to incorporate the way that I live and that I exist. And even
Yeah.
when I get into any states that would be less than feeling neutral, I don't stay in them because
Right.
I don't want to be anything but balanced. And
Yeah.
so that's to me, I use words like that, and like people can say mantras, people
Sure.
can write them down, people can say them, people can think them, whatever helps them. But I take words like that, and even like truth is another word. I've spent years and years and years and years and years and years and years holding truth in my heart, like
Yeah.
really working with truth, like
Hmm.
using it all the time, constantly saying it, constantly thinking about it, constantly actualizing that word. And
Yeah.
those are things that I feel are are tools that have helped me stay away from any polarization, because
Yeah.
I have seen both camps of the what you're speaking
Oh
about.
yeah.
And I have been in a camp here and there myself.
Sure.
And then I realized when I was in that camp that I had more to learn, because if I was in one of
Yep.
those camps, I was just as polar as the other side was, because I
Exactly.
wasn't being neutral. And so
Yeah.
I had to learn very, very quickly. And I chose to be in a particular space and time where I had to go through some judgments because
Yep.
of polarizations. And it helped me realize and remember that, like, I chose all that to just refine my neutrality and just keep
Yeah.
refining it and refining it and refining it. And it's not a judgment, it's not a wrong or right or good or bad or this side or that side. It's merely, okay, the ultimate for me, and I think we should end this pretty soon in a couple of minutes, but
Yeah.
the ultimate that I feel for what I want to attain in my physical world is I want to be in neutral state all the time. So I'm
Hmm.
I'm I'm in it most of the time, but I'm not in it all of the time. And I and
Well,
I
we're
feel
only human.
but I feel like ascended mastery is
Hmm.
more being in that neutrality all of the time,
Yeah.
but still being human, still choosing to be
Totally.
human, being on the human plane. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see it.
That's it. It's a good. Those are good words. My word is effortless ease.
Hmm.
I'm really about finding ease, spreading ease, just finding that kind of peace. Because again, really what I like to do, I really just like to play music. So there's really not as many words. And if there are words, they're not usually in English. And just to sing, I like to sing to people. Most people are just waiting to hear me sing, to be honest. Just like they're just like, it's just like this beauty. So it's like beauty, grace, and ease. That's like a energy that I just like to spread. And the rest, as George Carlin said, is just bullshit.
Well, maybe one day when we have another, I'll have another show. Maybe
Yeah.
one day you can do some singing, because I don't think I'm very aware of your singing. So I'd like
Oh,
to.
well, we don't really know each other yet. No, you don't know. You have not heard me play any music.
So I'm interested to learn you in that way, and have
Sure.
the audience learn you in that way, because
If
that sounds
it
lovely.
sounds good, I'm a if Zoom sounds good, that's a whole different level, and I am totally not willing to produce sounds that don't sound good. So that's a deeper technological question, because poor sound quality is just not acceptable to me.
Yeah, well, I don't know on your end. I'm doing this off of my phone, and I know
Yeah,
my phone has good sound, but I'm
yeah,
not sure what you're doing on your end, if it's a computer or if what you're using, but that
yeah.
would all depend on what equipment you have on your end.
Totally. We don't need to talk about this on here, but there's a lot of wisdom about how to play music if you're going to use Zoom. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
yeah, we can, on a personal note,
yeah,
catch up, on a sidebar. We'll do that. We'll catch up and connect about that,
yeah.
through message or whatever. And but yeah, I think do you have any like closing notes for this particular podcast that you would like to close off with before we head off?
You're right. It's just come into your body and listen to your body. That's like a summary of what we're talking about. Trust yourself, trust your body, and just follow that. Don't worry about what I said, what you said. Come into yourself, find that center, and then come from there. Your answers will be there. You just have to listen. Just do it.
Listening ears on, as they say in kindergarten or preschool.
Hello.
Your listening ears on, and listen to your
Yeah,
body and
listen.
the ways it speaks.
And the feeling, allowing yourself to feel. If you feel like crying, go have a private moment somewhere. Just honor that in the moment. You'll feel so much better. It'll be like, oh, it's gone. I'm so glad. I'm feel lighter. My heart's more open. I don't feel so heavy. It's so simple. It's the simplest things that are the most profound. Breathing.
Yes, I've been talking about that. I brought that up in my lives, my Facebook lives. I brought that up at least 3 or 4 times in the last month or two, is just constantly about like find a
Breathing.
breathing technique that works for you.
Yeah.
There's so many out there. It really does bring you back to center. Even if you simply don't have a lot of time and you're in a crowded situation, even if you take 3 deep breaths and
Yeah.
hold them and release them and let them go, that in itself will center your body. Like if that's all you can do in the moment, because of
Totally.
where you are, what's going on. Like I've always, like, when people get really, really upset or really worked up, I'm just like, breathe,
Yeah.
breathe, breathe. And usually once they do that, they can center themselves and calm themselves down. So
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic information. I'm so happy that you came on.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yes, so we will try to reconvene hopefully next Wednesday. We'll do this
Yeah.
same thing.
That sounds great. And now I will go commence to eating the food.
All right, go eat some food, sister. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for joining, and we will talk soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.